right. Welcome to another deep dive, everybody. Today we're going to be looking at Solana.
Solana.
Which you often hear shorthanded as SOL.
Yep.
And this is a blockchain platform that has been generating some serious buzz.
Yeah.
As a potential rival to Ethereum, which, has been kind of the big player in this space for a long time.
A long time, yeah.
I've got all the information you sent me here. This is like a really impressive set of sources, everything from its current price, up to the minute price data, historical price charts.
Yeah.
Technical deep dives on how this thing actually works.
Yeah.
And even news headlines about, what's going on with it.
Absolutely.
So, our mission today is to kind of like pull out the most important pieces from all of this.
Right.
And give the listener a really solid understanding of, where does Solana stand right now? What's its potential? And, what are the key things that are driving its performance?
Yeah. And without getting too bogged down in the weeds.
Exactly. We want to make this like approachable and understandable, even if you're not a, total crypto whiz.
For sure.
So we've got a live price snapshot from TradingView.
Okay.
Which also had some really interesting recent market analysis, sort of like predictions of where it might go.
Yeah.
We've got like the broader cryptocurrency market view from Forbes. Just basic background from the Solana Wikipedia page.
Okay.
Live prices from Binance, CoinMarketCap.
Right.
And then going straight to the source, we've got information from the official Solana website.
Yeah. Got to see what they have to say about themselves.
Exactly. And then finally, we've got this really great kind of like explainer piece from Investopedia.
Awesome.
So, okay, let's jump into it.
Let's do it.
Let's start with the absolute basics.
Okay.
What, in a nutshell, is Solana?
So Solana is what's called a layer 1 blockchain.
Okay.
Think of it as the foundation.
Okay.
It's the base layer that everything else is built on top of.
So not like a layer 2 solution which builds on top of something else.
Right, exactly. This is the base layer responsible for security and all that good stuff.
Got it.
And it came out publicly in March of 2020.
Okay.
And its real goals, right from the beginning, were to be super fast and have really low transaction costs.
And that sounds like really attractive, especially in the world of cryptocurrency where things can sometimes be, slow and expensive.
Exactly. And that's why it's become really popular for things like DeFi, decentralized finance,
right.
Which is basically, financial applications built on the blockchain.
Yeah.
And also for developers who want to create dApps.
Okay.
Decentralized applications.
That's cool.
So any kind of application you can imagine, but it's running on the blockchain.
So it's kind of like tailor-made for this world of like, this next generation of internet applications and financial services.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's like the but the ideas for Solana actually started a bit earlier than 2020, right?
Yeah, they go all the way back to 2017.
Oh, wow.
The main people behind it are Anatoly Yakovenko and Raj Gokal.
Okay.
The Solana Foundation, based in Geneva, is the one that actually launched the whole thing.
Okay.
And development's ongoing. It's handled by Solana Labs out in San Francisco.
Right. So it's got like this kind of international team and like a real focus on building for the future.
Yep, that's the idea.
Cool. So, okay, we know it's built for speed and low cost, but like, how does it actually achieve that?
Well, the magic lies in how it confirms transactions. It's called a consensus mechanism.
Okay.
And Solana uses a really kind of unique approach here.
Okay.
It combines something called proof of history.
Proof of history.
Or POH.
Right.
With the more widely known proof of stake POs.
Okay, so most people who are like somewhat familiar with crypto have probably heard of proof of stake.
Exactly, yeah.
But proof of history is a bit more like out there.
It's a little bit more niche.
Yeah, so tell me about that.
Okay, so imagine every transaction gets its own little digital fingerprint hash.
Okay.
And these fingerprints are all linked together in a chain.
Okay.
So you can prove the order and the time of every single event.
So it's like this like unbreakable timeline, basically.
Exactly. It's a verifiable timestamp.
Okay.
So there's no central authority saying, hey, this happened then, this happened then.
Right.
It's all built into the system itself.
That's pretty clever.
It's pretty neat.
Yeah. So how does this like digital timeline then work with proof of stake?
So proof of stake, you're probably more familiar with.
Yep.
Participants, called validators, lock up some of their cryptocurrency.
Which in this case is SOL.
In this case, SOL, exactly.
Right.
And that allows them to help verify new transactions.
Right.
And the more they stake, the more likely they are to be chosen to validate a block and earn rewards.
Right, right. So it's kind of like you're putting your money where your mouth is.
Exactly.
You're saying, I believe in this system.
Yeah.
So I'm going to put them skin in the game.
Right.
Okay, so Solana uses proof of history to like get that order straight before proof of stake comes in.
Exactly.
Okay, so it's all about creating this really smooth, efficient, and trustworthy system.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so much faster than, blockchains that just use proof of stake or the even older proof of work that Bitcoin uses.
So it's kind of like the best of both worlds.
You could say that.
Okay, and then this leads to like more developers being interested, more users, and that ultimately has an impact on, how much it's worth.
Absolutely.
Okay, so it's all interconnected.
Yeah.
So we're talking about this world of like apps, right?
Yeah.
Decentralized applications.
Yeah.
And like, NFTs are a big part of that.
NFTs, absolutely.
Web3, all these things we keep hearing
That's
about.
future of the internet.
The future of the internet, yeah.
It's exciting.
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
So is that kind of like the vision for Solana?
Yeah.
To be this platform where all of that stuff can thrive?
That's absolutely their goal.
Okay.
They want to be the go-to platform for all those sorts of applications.
Yeah.
And they're offering the speed and this low cost as their big advantage.
Right, because Ethereum, while it's been dominant, has also gotten some flack for, sometimes being a bit slow and having high fees.
Yeah, sure, yeah.
So Solana is kind of positioning itself as like, hey, if you want something that's faster, cheaper, come to us.
Yeah, come build on Solana.
And of course, underlying all of this is its cryptocurrency, which is SOL.
Yes, that's the fuel that keeps the whole ecosystem running.
Okay, so that's like the basic, what is Solana?
Right.
Let's talk about like the current market situation.
Okay.
How are things looking right now? What's the price doing?
So looking at the data from around April 7th and 8th of 2025,
Okay.
the live price of Solana was hanging out around $110 to $111.
Okay. That's a pretty respectable number.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
But, crypto's crypto.
It's volatile.
It's super volatile.
Things can change in the blink of an eye.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
And we also saw like different sources had slightly different numbers.
Yeah, that's always the case with these live prices.
It's just the nature of the beast.
Yeah.
But so it's around $110. But TradingView was pointing out that it recently dipped quite a bit.
Yeah, it fell below $112 at one point, even hit a low of around $95.
Oof.
Yeah, not great.
And then it kind of bounced back a little bit, right?
Yeah, it was around $101 when we were looking at the data, but there's this critical support level at $100. And some analysts are even saying, hey, if it breaks below that, it could keep dropping like down to $80 or even below $60.
Oh, wow. So there's like some real fear there.
There's definitely some nervousness in the market.
Yeah. And I guess, some of those past network outages that we talked about, that probably doesn't help.
No, it definitely makes people a little bit jittery.
Yeah.
But hey, at least in the very short term, things were looking a little bit better, right?
Right. So like if we look at just the last 24 hours.
Yeah, just the last 24 hours.
It was up, what was it, like 1.63% to almost 6%?
Yeah, somewhere in that range, depending on who you're asking.
Right.
But, if you zoom out a little bit, the picture is not quite as rosy.
Okay, so like over the past week,
7 days.
we're looking at a drop of like 11% to almost 14%.
Yeah, about that.
And then over the past month, it's even worse, like 18% to 22%.
Yep, that's a more significant correction.
Yeah, so while there's been this like little recent bump, it's still down quite a bit from where it was.
For sure.
So it's been a bit of a roller coaster. And, speaking of roller coasters, I'm curious, what's the highest and lowest that Solana has ever been?
Okay, so the all-time high, the peak, was around $295.
Wow.
And that happened on January 19th, 2025.
So pretty recently.
Yeah, not too long ago.
But then on the other end of the spectrum, the all-time low, there's a bit of a discrepancy here.
Yeah, different sources show slightly different numbers.
Which is common in crypto, I guess.
Oh, yeah. It's all about where you're getting your data from. But, some records show it going as low as 0.5052 way back in May 2020.
Which is like basically nothing.
Yeah, pennies.
Yeah.
But another source had it at $8 in December 2022.
Okay, so either way, it's gone from like basically nothing to almost $300 and back down again.
That's the wild world of crypto.
Yeah, that's quite a ride. So Okay, we've talked about the price, but what about the overall market? Like, how big is Solana right now?
Okay, so the market cap?
Market cap, meaning the total value of all the SOL that's out there.
Exactly, all the SOL in circulation.
Yeah.
That's somewhere between $55.59 billion and $57.42 billion.
So that's like a significant chunk of the crypto market.
Oh, yeah, it's a major player.
Yeah.
The circulating supply of SOL tokens is around 515.47 million.
Okay.
And that's out of a total supply of 597.98 million.
So it's not all out there yet.
No, not all of it.
And there's no like fixed maximum supply like Bitcoin has, right?
Right. So Bitcoin's got that hard cap at 21 million.
Yeah.
But Solana, they've got this thing called a burn protocol.
Burn.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting.
So tell me, what's that all about?
So every time there's a transaction on the network,
Okay.
a small fee is collected.
Right.
And 50% of that fee is permanently destroyed. It's burned.
So it's like gone forever.
Gone.
Okay. And what's the point of that?
Well, the idea is that by removing some SOL from circulation,
Okay.
it makes the remaining SOL more scarce.
Right.
And theoretically, that should make it more valuable over time.
So it's kind of like a built-in mechanism to like control inflation or like, prevent the value from getting diluted.
Yeah, you could think of it that way.
Okay. So that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's a neat little trick.
Okay. And then the trading volume, that's basically how much SOL is being bought and sold.
Yeah, how much activity there is.
Over the last 24 hours, it's been between $8.65 billion and $9.27 billion.
So a lot of people are buying and selling SOL.
Yeah, it's a very active market.
For sure.
Okay, so we've got this snapshot of where things stand right now with Solana. Yep. But, what are the things that are like really influencing these price movements and shaping its future outlook?
So there's a bunch of factors at play. Ooh. One that's creating a lot of excitement is the possibility of Solana ETFs being approved in the US.
ETFs, those are exchange-traded funds?
Yeah.
And those are basically like a way for, kind of more mainstream investors.
Yeah, institutional investors.
Institutional investors, exactly, to get exposure to something without like having to directly buy the cryptocurrency.
Exactly.
So if Solana ETFs were to be approved,
yeah,
that could mean a lot more money flowing into Solana.
A lot more money.
Which could really push the price up.
Yeah, big time.
So that's something that a lot of people are watching very closely.
For sure, that's a big one.
Okay, what else is going on?
Well, the competition's always a factor.
Yeah.
Solana's not the only player in this space.
Right. We've got Ethereum, which is, still the big dog.
The 800-pound gorilla.
Yeah. And there are other platforms out there as well. So how is Solana stacking up against the competition?
So TradingView pointed out that Solana's actually fallen behind Ethereum a bit when it comes to decentralized exchanges.
Like DEXs.
DEXs, yeah.
So those are like exchanges that are built on the blockchain.
Exactly. No central authority.
Yeah.
But even though they're not at the top of the DETEX rankings, they're still a really strong contender when it comes to these smart contract platforms.
Okay.
So there's definitely this ongoing battle for users and developers.
Right.
And that, of course, impacts how investors feel about it, which ultimately impacts the price.
Yeah, because if developers are excited about building on a platform,
yep,
that usually means that it's got a bright future.
Exactly.
Okay. We kind of have to talk about meme coins, right?
Oh, yeah, the meme coin craze.
That was huge in 2024.
Massive.
And Solana actually played a pretty big role in that, didn't it?
It did.
Why was that?
Well, Solana's so fast,
right,
and the fees are so low, it became like the perfect platform for creating and trading all these meme coins.
So like all these, dog-themed coins and all that stuff.
Yeah, all the crazy
stuff. It all like exploded on Solana.
It was a meme coin paradise.
Yeah.
Things like Dog with Hat, WIF, and Bonk, BONK.
Oh yeah, those were big.
Those were massive.
Yeah, I remember those.
Yeah.
So it really attracted a lot of attention to Solana.
It did.
It showed that it could handle like these sudden huge surges in activity.
Yeah, and it attracted a whole new crowd. People who might not have been that interested in, the more serious side of crypto.
Right. So it kind of like expanded the whole Solana community in a way.
Absolutely.
Okay, so we talk about these like external factors, the ETFs, the competition, the meme coins.
Right.
But let's get back to like the core technology itself.
Okay.
That speed and those low fees, like how fast are we actually talking here?
Okay, so Solana boasts exceptionally fast transaction speeds. And I mean like really fast.
Give me some numbers.
So theoretically, they can handle thousands, and some people even say millions of transactions per second.
Whoa, that's crazy.
It is. And the transaction fees are typically super low, like often less than 0.00025 hours per transaction.
So it's like almost free to use.
Almost.
Okay, and this is all made possible because of their super short block times, right?
Yeah, they've got block times of around 400 milliseconds.
Wow, that's like blazing fast.
It is.
Okay, so the whole network is just designed from the ground up to handle like huge volumes of transactions.
Scalability is the name of the game.
Right, that's a word we hear a lot in the crypto world, scalability.
Absolutely.
It basically means it can grow without like slowing down or becoming super expensive.
Exactly.
Okay, and despite all of this, it's still like decentralized, right?
Yeah, it's got thousands of independent nodes validating all these transactions.
Okay, so it's not like, one company or one entity controlling everything.
Nope, it's truly decentralized.
Okay, and this is all done in a way that's like much more energy efficient than some of the older blockchain systems.
Oh yeah, much more.
Because it's using proof of stake.
Exactly.
Which doesn't require all that like massive computing power that proof of work does.
Right, which is why Bitcoin uses so much energy.
Yeah, so Solana is much greener.
Much greener.
And one source even said that a Solana transaction uses about the same amount of energy as a few Google searches.
Which is pretty amazing when you think about it.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, so beyond, just trading SOL and meme coins,
right?
Like what are some of the real world applications that people are using Solana for?
Well, we've already mentioned NFTs. They're huge on Solana.
Yeah.
And DeFi protocols, all the lending, borrowing, decentralized exchanges, those are all happening on Solana.
Okay.
But what's really interesting is the emergence of blockchain-based digital payment systems.
Okay.
Like Solana Pay.
Solana Pay.
They've got an integration with Shopify now.
Shopify. Wow, that's big.
It is. Yeah.
So merchants can actually accept payments in USDC?
USDC, which is a stablecoin pegged to the US dollar.
Exactly.
So it's like, using digital dollars.
Yeah, basically.
But on the blockchain with super low fees.
Exactly.
So that's really cool.
It is, yeah.
And we're even seeing big, traditional institutions starting to get involved.
Yeah, institutional adoption is a big deal.
Yeah, and that's always a sign that something's like, becoming more mainstream and accepted.
Absolutely.
So what are some examples of that?
So we've got Franklin Templeton, a huge asset management firm. They've extended their Franklin On-Chain U.S. government money fund to the Solana network.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
It is.
But basically, it means they're putting some serious money into Solana.
Yeah, they're betting on it.
And then we've got Visa, the credit card giant.
Yeah.
They're now supporting USDC payments over Solana.
So you can use your Visa card to pay with USDC on the Solana network.
That's incredible. It is. And another really important thing to look at is the developer ecosystem.
Okay.
Because if you have lots of developers building on a platform, that usually means it's got a bright future.
It's a good sign.
Yeah, and reports show that Solana has one of the fastest growing ecosystems for new builders.
Oh, wow.
And get this, one report said that around 81% of all decentralized exchange trading volume is happening on Solana.
So it's like really becoming the place to be for this.
It is the hotspot.
That's amazing.
It is.
Okay, but it hasn't all been sunshine and roses, has it?
Right.
Solana has had some pretty significant challenges along the way.
Yeah, there have been bumps in the road.
Bumps in the road, yeah. So let's talk about those.
Okay.
Like the network outages.
The outages, yeah.
Those were a big deal, especially back in 2021 and 2022.
Yeah, those were rough.
What was causing those?
So there were a few things happening.
Okay.
Sometimes it was these huge, sudden surges in transaction volume.
So the network just couldn't handle it.
Mm-hmm. It got overwhelmed. And then there were some software bugs.
Yeah, that's going to happen with any new technology, right?
Yeah, it's part of the growing pains.
Yeah.
And then there were some issues with the network's consensus mechanisms, those algorithms that we talked about that make sure everything's running smoothly.
Right, so they were still kind of working out the kinks in those.
Exactly, yeah.
And obviously, these outages, really freak people out.
Oh, yeah. It's not a good look when your network goes down.
Yeah, especially when you're positioning yourself as this super fast, reliable platform.
Right. It kind of undermines that whole message.
Yeah, and it definitely had an impact on the price.
Oh, yeah. The price tanked every time there was an outage.
Because people were like, oh, this isn't as reliable as we thought it was.
Exactly. It really shook confidence.
Okay. And then there were also some security concerns, right?
Right. There was a big one back in August 2022.
What happened there?
So thousands of Solana wallets got hacked.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And millions of dollars worth of crypto were stolen.
That's a disaster.
Yeah, it was bad.
So what was the cause of that?
Well, the Solana Foundation investigated, and they eventually found out that it was actually a vulnerability in the Slope Finance wallet software.
So Slope Finance, that's a third-party app, right?
Exactly.
So it wasn't like a fundamental flaw in Solana itself.
Right. It was an external app that was built on top of Solana.
But still, it kind of tarnished the reputation a little bit.
It definitely didn't help.
Yeah, because people were just like, oh, this isn't secure.
Yeah. And, when it comes to crypto, security is paramount.
Absolutely, yeah.
So any kind of breach like that is a big deal.
Yeah, it really shakes people's trust.
For sure.
Okay, and then we've got the regulatory issues.
The regulators, yeah.
They've been kind of circling around crypto for a while now.
Oh, yeah, they're definitely paying attention.
Yeah, and Solana has gotten its fair share of scrutiny, hasn't it?
It has.
So what's been going on there?
So, first of all, there was a class action lawsuit
Claiming that Solana's initial coin offering, or ICO, was basically an unregistered securities sale.
So they were saying that Solana was selling something that should have been registered with the SEC.
Exactly.
Okay.
And they were also accusing Solana of misleading investors about the total supply of SOL tokens.
So basically, they're saying that Solana wasn't being completely transparent?
Yeah, that's the gist of it.
Okay.
And then in June 2023, the SEC themselves actually filed a lawsuit.
The big guns came out.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in that lawsuit, they named SOL as one of the cryptocurrencies that they consider to be a security.
A security, meaning like a stock or a bond.
Yeah, subject to all those SEC regulations.
Okay.
And the Solana Foundation, they've been very vocal about disagreeing with this classification.
So they're saying that SOL is not a security.
Exactly.
Okay.
But, the SEC is a powerful force.
Yeah, they're not to be trifled with.
Right.
And this whole thing has actually led to some exchanges delisting SOL.
Yeah, like Robinhood, they took it off their platform because they were worried about, running afoul of the SEC.
Exactly. They didn't want to get in trouble.
So all of this regulatory uncertainty, that's definitely weighing on the price.
Oh, yeah. It's a big cloud hanging over Solana.
Yeah, because investors don't like uncertainty.
Nope. They want things to be clear-cut.
And this is anything but clear-cut.
It's a bit of a mess, to be honest.
Okay, and then finally, we have to mention the FTX bankruptcy.
Oh, yeah. That was a major event.
November 2022.
That sent shockwaves through the whole crypto market.
Yeah. And Solana was hit particularly hard, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
Why was that?
So Alameda Research, which was a sister company of FTX,
Okay.
they held a lot of SOL tokens.
A lot.
A lot.
Okay.
And when FTX went bankrupt,
Right.
Alameda was forced to sell off a bunch of their assets.
Including their SOL.
Yeah, including a ton of SOL.
Okay.
And that just flooded the market with SOL.
So the supply went way up,
Way up.
which pushed the price way down.
Exactly. It was a classic supply and demand situation.
Yeah, so the FTX collapse, that was just like this huge, unexpected event.
Yeah, nobody saw it coming.
That really impacted the whole crypto landscape. And Solana was right in the crosshairs.
It was, yeah.
Okay, so it's been a bit of a bumpy ride for Solana, but there's still a lot of potential there.
There's still a lot of excitement around it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes down to the underlying technology, which is really impressive.
Yeah, it's innovative stuff.
So let's dive back into that a little bit.
Okay.
We talked about proof of history, that time stamping mechanism.
Yeah.
Can you just explain that a little bit more? Like for people who